What is going on, you guys? With the Clone Wars coming back for a 7th season, I figured there's never been a better time to talk about Clone Wars versus the Empire. What am I talking about this for? Well, first off, you may have just wondered if the Republic at its height would ever be a match for the Empire, or even the CIS and General Grievous and all of them would ever have been a match for a fleet of Imperial Star Destroyers, or how they would compare to each other in the Galactic Civil War. And this is particularly relevant when it comes to gaming and gaming balance. Let's say you wanted a new video game like a Battlefront 2 to come out with something where you could go take Clone Wars up against like a fleet. You know, they have a little bit of this in Battlefront 2 where you can kind of mix and match heroes, but some people don't like stuff like that. And in tabletop gaming, and specifically I'm going to talk about in Star Wars Armada, you know, I have seen the complaints that old stuff can't compete against new stuff, so it wouldn't be right to mix and match them. And I want to make the argument that there is a lot of stuff that's from the old that also could compete. Specifically along the lines of clone troopers and their advanced training compared to like stormtroopers and the clone pilots compared to TIE fighter pilots. Whereas the Empire may have had better technology, they also had to conscript their people, and you saw a different level of quality of the individual trooper in the Clone Wars, you know, since they were bred specifically to be expert soldiers and pilots and you know, and fighters. So but one of the main complaints I hear so much is that, well, it would be boring because there's not even enough ships to make it fun as far as if on a tabletop game, because the Republic, they pretty much just had the Venators. And so I'm going to talk about the different ships, and there's maybe more than you think. So first off, the Consular class cruiser. You saw this one in episode 1. This is the ship. Now, a lot of these are going to be smaller capital ships. Now, I'm only talking about capital ships today. I am not talking about the starfighters, because there's a lot of fighters. There's a lot of, you know, everything from like freighters down on like from Millennium Falcon size stuff all the way down to like TIE fighter and A-wing sized stuff. There's a lot of that. I think that might be worthy of its own video. So I'm just going to talk about the capital ships today and how much versatility you can get there. And then for a Star Wars tabletop game like Star Wars Armada, how many different types of ships you could fit. So the Consular class cruiser is, you know, is that first ship we see in episode 1 that brings Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on board the Lucrehulk, and it's generally not an armed ship, but there are armed variants of it. So it would probably be a lightly armed, fast ship for the Republic. So there is that, although it does have that back end that might look familiar if you are familiar with Star Wars Rebels or the Architans. Next up is the Paladin class Corvette. Now, Paladin class Corvette was really only seen in one story arc in canon on the Clone Wars, where they were transporting some Jedi to Ilum. But this should generally be a pretty heavily defensive smaller ship, because it is used to transport Jedi, who should have pretty good shields, should have moderate maneuverability. It may not be very heavy on the weapons, though it's not particularly a gunship. It is primarily used for transport. As a matter of fact, you won't even see any guns on this, but you do see emplacements where guns could be affixed, namely those 3 emplacements on the side that look like they could be outfitted for escape pods or extra turbo lasers, however it wanted to be outfitted. But it's a prime candidate, has a lot of mass to it, so it should be very fast, could have those engines, but a lot of shield generator space as well. But it would make a great ship. And I'm only talking canon ships here too, so I'm not even having to pull from Legends to come with this list for you. Next up, the Architans. This was a mainstay of the Republic fleet and has pretty heavy guns for a small ship. This is a light cruiser, very much a broadside ship, has some frontal facing guns as well, but again, we've seen the Architans already in use by the Empire during Star Wars Rebels. It's also an Imperial ship in Star Wars Armada, you know, but this is one of those ships that covers both timelines. If they wanted to make this for the Republic, they already have the models in use for Star Wars Armada. It would be very, very easy. The same holds true for the CR-90. The CR-90s were definitely used by the Old Republic, generally a little bit more towards the end of the war, but great ship, multi-purpose, very fast, has guns, not super gun heavy, but multi-purpose ship that's primarily known for speed. Next up, a pretty cool one, the stealth ship. The stealth ship was seen in in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, to get some relief supplies past the blockade. But this also made its way to be the blueprint for Tarkin's ship, the Carrion Spike. So here's a ship that has dual purpose. And I like the idea that there are some ships that are used both by the Old Republic and the Empire because of the fact that it means that you can see, with one ship being designed, you can have an expansion for multiple different factions. And I think, that's very efficient. And you can even have them perform differently. Maybe this ship is more brand new when it's being used by the Republic. Maybe it's older by the time the Empire is using it. Maybe the Empire has outfitted it with some new technology that it didn't have, right? So there's a lot of that. And so the stealth ship would be interesting. I don't know how they would do stealth in some of these tabletop war games. There's one idea that I had for a stealth ship would be that when you cloak, and maybe it's a card you have to play. Maybe you have to play Stygium crystals on it. When you cloak and you no longer have access to any of your defense tokens, except you gain access to a new one. You have access to the scatter defense token, and accuracies cannot be rolled against you. So this, basically, you can scatter once and then maybe stay cloaked, or you can scatter twice and now they know where you are, and now you're no longer cloaked anymore. Something like that is a possibility. Be kind of fun. The Pelta. The Pelta is definitely, one of those double duty ships. They already have the mold for this. The Rebels are using an old Pelta left over from the Clone Wars. And a lot of ships that were used in the Clone Wars have made their way into the Galactic Civil War because, well, one day the Clone War stopped, the next day the Galactic Civil War started. So it really is not, it's not a full 30 years between both time periods. It's just 30 years, between the end of one time period and the other one. So there's definitely a lot of room for crossover. But the Pelta, great ship, well-rounded, a little on the slower side, but makes it for a great command ship, great support ship, and a little bit tougher, a little bit bigger than your CR-90. Now we're getting to the bigger stuff. Again, I'm kind of working my way up from smaller to bigger. The Acclamator class transgalactic military assault ship. This thing is pretty big. Now, this would be our first medium ship, I think, of the Republic. This one's not particularly known for its firepower, though. This one was more or less used to transport troops, so this one would probably be more of a tank, more of like maybe even a flagship that you want your commander on to lead the battle from relative safety in certain tabletop games. Games like Armada, you're not really landing ships. At least not right now. Maybe that'll be a new option. There'll be some kind of planetary warfare at a certain point, in which case this would have a loads of new applications. But it's definitely a larger ship. Has a lot of very bulky. Has a lot of hull. Has a lot of room to be outfitted with guns as well. You could you could do a lot with a ship like this. And then this would also, larger ships on a battlefield, add some contrast for all your smaller ships and make them, the larger ships stand out more. It's just, I like having small and large at the same time. Keeping going with the larger ships, we have, of course, the Venator, the mainstay of the Republic. Now, there's different categories of Venators. There's different types. Towards the end of the war, they actually introduced a new type of Venator. So I think one of the things that we could have happen is we could have two different sculpts for Venator, or if they wanted to do like they did with the Chimera in Star Wars Armada, they could have the regular Imperial Star Destroyer and then come out with a reprint, like an upgrade to it, basically so you can have more Venators. I think if you wanted a realistic Republic fleet, you're probably going to want to have several Venators. And you can have a different categories. You can have multiple different classes of Venators on the field, and maybe the newer ones are marked with a different paint job. And that's fine. Different paint jobs are fine. And the Republic fleet was more colorful, so that's one thing you will find. And I just think Venators would also be larger, but still a medium ship. Still a medium ship, and probably mostly a broadside ship. Definitely heavy broadside arc here, and I think that'd be great. And this would also pull double duty, because these were also used by the Empire for a long time. I mean, they didn't have a fleet of Imperial Star Destroyers ready to go the day the Empire announced we're going to be the Empire now. The Emperor announced that they're going to be on Empire Day, basically. So these were used to hold them over for years still. So these are used all the way up into the Tarkin model. They had these while they were constructing the Death Star, although granted they started constructing the Death Star for a long, They started that much earlier than Episode 4. So these guys would definitely be there, and even though, this being the mainstay of the Republic fleet, even though these ships can't take down an Imperial Star Destroyer, like, this is not a match for an Imperial Star Destroyer. An Imperial Star Destroyer is a full upgrade. These tabletop war games like Armada, there's a point value, so you might be able to field 2 of these for the cost of 1 Imperial Star Destroyer. Or maybe not 2, you know, maybe 1.5, but there's one thing that the Old Republic had access to that the, you know, well, maybe 2 things, because clones, I already talked about clones, but there's another thing that the Old Republic had access to that the Empire just doesn't have, and that's an abundance of Force users. Jedi Knights. Okay, now, maybe a Venator in the hands of the Empire, you know, would be a moderate threat. Not as much of a threat as an ISD, but might be a moderate threat. But a Venator with Mace Windu at the helm, you know, helping, you know, motivate, inspire everybody, you know, helping those gunners, using the Force to calm the gunners and increase their aim, you know, and maybe help the crew perform more efficiently, could be a significant threat. Oh, I think if they did, you know, make an Old Republic faction, one of the things I would love to see is a lot of Jedi crew, expensive Jedi crew. You know, you can run a whole bunch of Venators without any Jedi, but maybe Jedi crew are like 20 or more points a piece, taking up the officer slots. You know, you can put a different Jedi on each of your ships. Maybe now it can compete with an Imperial Star Destroyer, because put Yoda on board a Venator and have him help guide that crew. I bet you he could probably manage to survive an attack from an Imperial Star Destroyer with somebody like Yoda at the helm using battlefield meditation or something like that. So I think that's one definite advantage. And lastly, I will point out that while it's not seen in the Clone Wars, we do have confirmation through the books, such as Tarkin, that they did start using Victory-class Star Destroyers towards the end of the Old Republic, which then, of course, made their way into the Empire. And Victory Star Destroyers have been one of those things that have been legends. They have been in the EU forever. They still have not really appeared on screen yet, and there's a whole lot that goes on. But basically, a Victory Star Destroyer is about the largest medium ship, and just a little shy of becoming a large ship. So I don't think the Republic would have any large ships. So let's go ahead. We have the CIS to talk about as well, because, again, if we're talking about Clone Wars, let's also talk about the other guys. Because they have a lot of different capital ships as well. Also, I wanted to remind you guys, I'm going to be announcing the 3rd and final giveaway winner at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. All right, so the CIS used Gazantes. Gazantes are also in use by the Empire. You know, Gazantes make for a great, you know, very, very small ship flotilla, transport, fleet support, all of that. You know, you're probably already familiar with Gazantes and their capabilities. It's the older style of Gazanti, but yes, they definitely used Gazantes, as well as the Empire used Gazantes, and as well as Scum had their own type of Gazantes. Gazantes were all over the place. Everybody used them, just about. Let's not forget Episode 1. I talked about Episode 1 before. You have your C-9979 landing craft. Now, these are larger, you know, much larger than your starfighters, but they use these to land the assault on Naboo. Again, not heavily weaponized ships, but could provide a support function. Again, we talked about if there was some type of planetary bombardment, but these are also recognizable, and they're hard cannon, and that, you know, I mean, hard cannon isn't really a term, but anything that was in the movies, I think, is has a special place. Like, I kind of want to see movie stuff before I want to see stuff from all the animated shows, just because the movies came first and the animated shows came afterwards. So I kind of place movies that with a little bit more priority than stuff that showed up in a show. It's all canon, though. I get that. Now, the hard cell class Interstellar Transport, these are these little ships over here that are like landed, and they look like they have the little heads on them. Now, these are actually part of the Techno-Union's ships that we were seeing at the Battle of Geonosis. We haven't seen a whole lot of them in flight. They were, honestly, at the time, they were probably just put there to look cool and to demonstrate, like, the way that, you know, the Trade Federation, the CIS, the Confederacy ships were going to look different than the Republic's stuff. But then again, it does kind of follow a lot of like the Expanse's style of thrust. You know, like the thrusters are all on the bottom, and it's going to take off from that way. So more like a rocket than your typical like ship that has artificial gravity. These may not have had any artificial gravity on them, as a matter of fact. But very small ships, probably maybe some type of flotilla. At least as it applies to Star Wars Armada. Next up is, and it would be a really interesting one, and this one would be kind of pushing the boundaries though, but the Trident class assault ship. This was used for, this has underwater capabilities, and these are kind of like these squids. These were used on the attack on the cloning facility of Camino, and you can also see these in Battlefront too. Like but they have hull punching abilities. So as it applies to wargaming, this would be a ship that wants to get up close. Probably no ranged weapons, but does lots of extra damage if it's able to ram you because it wants to be in close proximity. You can do all kinds of interesting mechanics, unique upgrades here, unique titles. This would be a ship you've got to destroy before it gets to you. You probably wouldn't want to make this a speed 4 ship, though. You'd probably want to make this a speed 3 tops. You know, you couldn't make it too fast because you don't want to create a negative play experience, but this one can wreak havoc by punching through the hull of a ship, causing critical damage. Nasty, nasty ship. Empire doesn't use anything like this. Next up, oh yes, the Recusant class warship. We've seen a lot of these, very, very deadly. Kind of seen in multiple episodes of the Clone Wars, as well as in the backgrounds, a lot of fighting. Especially, you look at that opening scene of Episode 3, when you know, and that's one of the things that really makes me want both of these two factions to show up in my tabletop games and in my video games as well. Because there's so much shooting, so many really great broadside ships. You know, just a lot of capital ships on both sides. But here's one of the mainstays. And speaking of mainstays, and we're getting into the medium ships, so the bigger stuff, bigger than those tiny small ships, with the medium ships here. Moving up, the Providence class dreadnought. I think this one was actually General Trench's, and this is part of when they used that stealth ship to go past and deliver supplies. But yeah, and this one came in 2 different versions. This was they had a medium version as well as a large version of this, so you could have this could cover multiple different expansions as well. Very iconic as well of the CIS here, especially this particular one with a little bird beak face, but very deadly ships here. Now we're getting into some of the really big ones because the CIS has some of the biggest ships in Star Wars, which is kind of cool. Now the Lucrehulk, the droid control ship. You saw this one in Episode 1 for the first time. This was absolutely huge. And I do think it could fit because it is bigger than an Imperial Star Destroyer, but not that much bigger. I think you could, you could have a lot of fun with a ship like this. It might not even move. It doesn't even have to move, but it would definitely be controlling all of those squadrons. Probably have a squadron value of like 6. You know, you do something like that. Especially for the CIS, you're going to need all those Vulture droids. You're going to have lots and lots of squadrons. Might need some kind of different base for them though. And, of course, we can't talk CIS without talking Grievous's most famous ship here, the Malevolence, the Subjugator-class heavy cruiser. This thing is massive. This thing is about 4,800 meters long. This is so epically huge. Not, you know, like oh, gosh, like we're approaching like almost Super Star Destroyer range for this one. It's absolutely magnificent. With this huge ion cannon on the side, too. This would be such an amazing ship to have on the tabletop. And it represents some really unique weaponry, too. So there's a lot of different ways that this could cause disruption, as well as just having general firepower. So we're seeing a lot of different stuff that the Empire just doesn't necessarily have a counter for. And the CIS also has their own share of Force users and talented individuals that can contribute. General Grievous, for example, Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku, and all of the traitors, too. You could have, Barriss, and different people that, crossed sides and stuff. A lot of interesting things. Plus, we don't know what's still going to happen in Season 7. There could be new powerful villains, people allied with the CIS that could help empower these ships as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below, who you think would win. But we have a winner. We have a winner. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I want to congratulate Catherine Nixera. You are the winner of the third and final X-Wing Corset, 2.0 conversion kit, not Corset. So just go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'll get your contact information, and we'll square all of that away. Thank you guys so much. That is the third and final giveaway. Now, if I did call your name in one of my recent videos, this whole week I've been doing giveaways at the end. I do them at the end of the video. You've got 30 days to contact me. Otherwise, you'll forfeit your prize, and it rolls over into future giveaways. So it never ends here. There will be more giveaways coming very, very, very soon. And I think the announcements of Gen Con are probably going to play a big part in what the next giveaway is. But if that's not enough, if you want more giveaways, I have more giveaways running. I will be starting another giveaway on Patreon for some promos. That was going to be starting in just a few days, so stay tuned for that as well. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and if you would like to enter any future giveaways, all it takes is to become a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. You're automatically entered to win. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to check out Crabbok.com. Follow me on social media at Crabbok and Facebook. You can check me out on Patreon as well, and we also have a Discord server in there, so you can hop on in and chat with us. And periodically, I'll take your screenshots from maybe some of your printed game components, your printed Legion minis, or repainted, Star Wars Armada or X-Wing ships, and I will occasionally put together like a community feedback where we'll go through and like, hey, look at what so-and-so painted and stuff like that. So that's always a lot of fun too. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.